Hey, Mark from the Geek Church here, and today I'm doing another episode of my show. By the way, make sure you catch last week's episode if you hadn't. It was about dogs, and those that like dogs probably like this. Yeah, I kind of wish I knew how to do some videos a bit better. I've been actually looking at some of my videos. I've noticed like in a lot of the midpoint of the videos, the sound gets very wonky, and all I can say is maybe I better not use that editing software anymore. Alright, so if this video is late, now you know why, because I had a bit of a learning curve there. Yeah, so honestly, I think in retrospect, if I'm doing a video about dogs, I really need to have more footage of dogs just being cute. But hey, I received sort of an interesting thing. I've noticed that my TikTok videos I've been posting have been getting thousands of views, which is just unprecedented. Just nothing has happened like that before. I don't think it's even related to this show I'm doing now, or at least I don't think it is. I don't know. When did I get fretted with the algorithm? Anyway, so back to the subject of my dog video. Yeah, I wanted it to be something upbeat because the previous week I talked about bullying, which is kind of a downer topic, and then I ended up talking about how when my dog passed away. Okay, that isn't really funny, but I think it sort of shows that oftentimes if you want to embrace the joy in life, you have to embrace the pain of it too. It's all part of the same package. And for me, I tell the truth. And the problem with telling the truth is we are kind of accustomed to living in a world where essentially telling the truth all the time is discouraged. And I understand why. Most of us don't want to hear that we don't want to be at work today, okay? In fact, so much so that there are awful truths that have been buried for years. We have just been... just as a society, we have had just this undercoat of prejudice gone through here. There have been people that have been abusing fellow workers and people underneath them for years, and it just went unreported, and they just kept doing it, and they just kept getting better at it, and it just got swept under the rug. I'm starting a 4-part series today, and it's called Letters I Want to Send. Now, this episode format's going to be pretty simple. If you've noticed, a lot of my videos are pretty simple. I just take takes and then I just stitch them together, and usually I don't try and go out of my way to do something, and the last time I went out of my way to do something, nothing really happened of it, so I didn't exactly get more views, but hey, at least it keeps things interesting. For now, I'm just going to read this letter that I have written, and I actually do intend on sending it, at least in email form. But for the sake of this, I just have this prop here because it's just cool to have this. So this is a 4-part series, and this is part 1 of the series. And I'm going to try and do my best to explain the focus of this series. I mentioned in episode 5 of my series about bullying that I wanted to explain how I was hurt by individuals and how I hurt individuals. In this particular series, I'm going to discuss 4 particular organizations that have hurt me. Now, I'll get to the organizations here in time, but let me just say that it really hurts to be hurt by an individual person, but I think it even hurts more to be hurt by an organization. And in my case, when I was hurt by one of these organizations, by each of these organizations, has resulted in major setbacks in life. Each. So that's major setback in my life times 4. I'll let you do the math after this 4-part series is over. Okay, so with the case of bullying by individuals, you will notice when I did that video, I only hold them accountable in the sense of I acknowledge the fact that it happened. You will notice I never used any real names on that one, although you could track them down if you wanted to, and I highly suggest not doing that. I really don't see any reason to ask for restitution for those particular cases. At the time that happened, I was a minor, they were minors. I think we can put a clean slate on that. Now, in case of these organizations, there will be times where I do call them out by name, at least by the organization. And there are times in which I will use individual names of people that I knew were responsible for doing bad things, not only to me, but to others. Now, organizations are actually great. I've been in several teams, and the best part about being on a team is everyone takes the credit, and no one necessarily has to take the blame. Good decisions are always looked at as a group decision, and bad decisions can often be looked at as the decision of one, or the decision of one with bad information. It can always be just kind of shoved to the side as far as like, hey, look at our good decisions. And hey, this is just one that, hey, at least we got 90% right, that's still an A. And I think we all know that we live in a country where there's a lot of organizations that run a lot of things, and that the decisions of the few can often affect the many with terrible results. And they can often affect the one, and in this case, me. Now, the first organization I'm going to talk about is Washington State University. And yes, I've mentioned this before. This is the school I went to. This is the school that is located maybe a few miles away from my house that I'm living in now. So yeah, I'm specifically targeting, and by targeting I am not referring to a very negative view of that, but I'm saying like I'm officially putting in the spotlight the Department of Education. Years ago they made a decision that I felt was not in the best interest of me, who as a student was paying them a lot for that education. And I kind of felt that what I was given at the end of my learning experience at WSU was not what I paid for. And at the time this happened, I felt like they were doing no attempt to do anything but just try and cut me off, and it resulted in a lot of bad things for the following years. It's very clear that they did not know how much this was going to hurt me when they did this. I don't know if that makes it better. Sometimes I think that maybe that makes it worse, and I'm going to explain what is going on here. Okay, I'm just going to get to the letter now. Dear WSU Education Department, I'm hoping this reaches the right department because I'm not certain who to submit this to. After all, I'm contacting you to inform you of a mistake that was made about 30 years ago. I'm very certain that anyone working from there is either retired or moved on. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Mark Rollins, and I was a graduate of WSU in 1994 with a degree in English. At the time, I was in English secondary education, wanting to be a secondary English teacher. I was all set up to graduate in the spring, and I was all set up to do my student teaching in Vancouver, Washington. At the time, I was getting pretty stressed for graduation, as well as preparing for a summer job and setting up my housing for the fall for my student teaching. About 3 weeks before graduation, I received a phone call and was summoned to the office of Cleveland Hall, I believe where the head of, or where the Department of Education is focused on, I think. I was summoned there not knowing the reason why. I was summoned into some kind of conference room, and I don't know the exact number, and I don't know the exact time. As far as I don't know the exact time, I don't know the exact date, but it took place in the spring of 1994. In this conference room, there are 4 people in it who were administrative people at the Department of Education, I guess. I honestly don't remember who they were. I didn't exactly write their names down. I don't even know if there's even a memo existing that even explains this meeting. I'm not even sure if there's even records for this meeting. I do remember one of the persons in attendance was definitely my advisor, which I thought was very strange. And this advisor had an office in Avery Hall, which was located across campus, not even related to the Department of Education whatsoever. Now, I don't remember what I was told at the very beginning. Basically, they were very much being critical of my attitude on certain issues. And but the time we reached the middle of the meeting, I was told that I was not really the person that they wanted to be a teacher. The reason was because they didn't appreciate my attitude and how I was very set in my ways. Now, I'm going to explain later what I mean by that. I would do it now, but honestly, at the time, this was not very well explained to me. Needless to say, being in this room and, when you're just about to graduate and about to become a student teacher in the fall, and then suddenly hearing that you are not the student that you think you are, you're not going to probably be the person that you think you're going to be, was very distressing, to say the least. Not only that, I felt very betrayed. I felt like these were people that I've been working with for years. Like, my advisor was in the room. All these people, they knew my teachers. I'm not sure how this meeting was even organized and who in the world basically complained about me, and I don't really care. And honestly, I believe that they have a reason. I'm going to explain this here. But at the time, I felt such a sense of huge betrayal that I did not feel this was handled very well at all. And so I asked them, what is it that I can do? And then one of them spoke up, and I got the feeling like they were hesitating in the words, and they basically just said, "We were hoping you would pick another field other than education." And basically they were just telling me, "We want you to quit." Not only were they telling me that they wanted me to quit, I could feel them getting very hostile. And I got the feeling that not only they want me to quit, but they would look like they were going to fire me right there. And by fire, I mean like they were just going to say, "Okay, you're not going to be a student teacher." I wasn't even sure they were going to even let me graduate. And honestly, I think they were offering me this lifeline of like, "Okay, you can quit now so we don't have to look bad, and you don't have to look bad when we finally let you go." Now, to my credit, I asked how I can change, because I wanted to change on this. If there was something I did to offend them, if there was something on that, I wanted to know. Now, I have suddenly remembered that I've forgotten to tell that these 4 people in the room weren't the only 4 people. There was another guy in it who was on the speakerphone. Now, I don't know who this guy is. I remember it was a male person, or it's just some guy on the phone, just some authority somewhere. Now, I asked this guy here, I said, like, "Hey, how can I change?" And the voice on the speakerphone said, "Hey, well, being a teacher isn't what you do, it's who you are." And this got repeated over and over. I kept saying like, "Hey, listen, I love kids, I'm trying to help out, I'm trying to do something here. Why in the world am I being treated this way?" It was very clear that there was an agenda for this meeting, and that agenda was to simply kind of make me quit or something like that. I will have to say that I felt there were screws being turned, and here's the thing. I reacted to it. I got very mad and I got very sad. I remember swearing at them because honestly I felt like I was absolutely betrayed, and I also remember crying because it was like I felt very hurt by this. I told them at the time that I wanted to continue my path as a student teacher, and they told me they were going to get back to me as far as what decision they were going to make. But essentially I was being told that, "Hey, I'm going to be judged, and in the end you might not make it." And yeah. Now, I want to make this very clear. I am on the autism spectrum. I'm also going to make this very clear. I did not know I was on the autism spectrum at the time. In fact, I didn't find out I was on the autism spectrum until I was 51. I bring this up because I believe that it was because of my condition that allowed me to stand out amongst the students of the time as perhaps not being ideal. And so I kind of understand their decision, and at the time, I'm sure they thought it was right. I'm absolutely certain this is what led to that meeting in the first place. I'm pretty sure I actually say this again in the letter, but I understand ignorance, okay? So I understand that you didn't know about that at the time, You have no idea how to do this. You treated me like a regular person, or you thought that what you were seeing was the behavior of a neurotypical person. But unfortunately, we live in a world where that isn't the case, and we live in a world where that was the case back then. So I bring this up because, well, I'm going to get to the conclusion here. I'm also going to say that if you bring a person into who has atypical kind of a neurodiversity going on, you put them in a room and you start bringing up their faults, and you keep bringing up and you keep going around, they will get hostile. And so if you felt any hostility back then, understand that is where that came from. And as far as the sadness goes, honestly, that's on you. You really shouldn't have done that. And basically, when you do this, basically, if you do this to a person like me, they're going to take it very personally. And I bring this up because I'm going to mention that later. I'll put that on hold for now. Needless to say, you better believe that when that happened, that broke me. My immediate reaction at the time was, for the next few weeks, I tried to get anyone that I knew within the department, within the education department, any professor, any teacher, any assistant that I knew, to try and get on my side. I wanted this decision overturned. I knew it was awful, and I just felt like I was being put under a microscope unnecessarily. Anyway, I felt like there were a lot of people who were just sort of, for lack of a better term, not plotting against me, but at the same time were trying to put me down behind the sidelines. And this just felt very cool, or very uncool. And I just kind of felt like, geez, I just didn't feel that it was, I didn't feel like not only was it unearned, but I felt like the way that this could have been handled was very terrible. And you know, if anyone really had any disagreement with me, they could have came up to me and talked to me about it, but no one did. So eventually, a few days before graduation, during finals week, I was called in the office and told I would not be student teaching. I was told that I had people who were on my side and wanted me to teach, but in the end, the decision was made for me not to teach. Now, I cannot begin to tell you how much this set me back, and how essentially the 4-year education that I had paid for all that time had simply just gone to waste. It was like someone hit the reset switch, and I was not prepared for that. Especially when I was on the autism spectrum and didn't even know that. So I had a bunch of stuff to deal with at the time that I didn't even have any idea I was dealing with. And essentially, this came along and completely derailed me, and it was terrible. And I felt very uncared for and very marginalized. But here's the deal. I understand why the decision was made. I have to admit, I had very conservative values back then. I'd probably be considered a Trump voter now. I'm not, by the way, but I'd be very much alt-right. I would have been the version of the alt-right back then in the early 90s. I was not very gay affirmative, and I do regret that. I think part of the thing that might have triggered the meeting was a particular class I took. I don't really remember the name of the class, but during the class we watched a film called Broken Rainbow. And I kind of, Broken Rainbow is about the plight of the Native Americans and how they continue to get their land taken away from them more and more. And I remember commenting on this, that I didn't really feel like, I wasn't certain if this film was true. I felt that there was a lot of, I felt that it was, it could have been easily biased, and I felt that it had a slanted viewpoint. Now, yes, I regret saying that. I have since looked into this, and yeah, of course, I understand the... I think what's been happened to Native Americans as well as other minority groups has been terrible. And I think part of that is the sense that I think I wanted to have a lot of denial, thinking that, hey, that we were actually on the up and up, when I think recent events in our recent history have shown that we still have a long way to go. Yeah, I realize how much white privilege I have, and I think that's pretty bad, and I can understand why you did what you did. The problem is when someone feels betrayed, they feel betrayed, and I don't really think that this was handled properly, and I get the feeling that, and honestly, if you have students who have been denied their student teaching because they had beliefs like mine, I want to know about that, honestly. I think there's ways you could have worked with them and they would have changed. And but for now, I feel like, yeah, that is seriously still making me upset. I never felt like this was handled properly. I never really felt like I was just being used, and yeah, it's just really bad. I'm also concerned that the Department of Education does not understand the neurotypical, and I am concerned that I'm not the only person who's denied their student teaching because they didn't fit in a certain mold, and because of not what they did, but who they are or who they thought they were. After all, if I got as far as I did, being undiagnosed with autism, who else has this happened to? Who else have you brought in and then thought, okay, we're going to make them a student teacher, and then you decided no? As I've said before, I understand if you didn't understand it back then. It was the early 90s. Autism was just getting in the public eye. You didn't know, okay? I'm willing to pardon that. I'm willing to just sort of say, okay, I understand that. However, in that context, I was basically judged as just sort of a bad, unenlightened person. Not only that, I don't really remember being offered any kind of refund or anything like that. I was just basically just sort of cast off. They didn't give me any advice on what to do next. As you can clearly tell, I am still pretty angry about this, and but not to the point where I'm enraged or I'm seeking revenge. Basically, I do feel that sense of betrayal. That's real. I do a lot of work now in Pullman, Washington. Some of my work was up on campus. I actually went up on campus today, and honestly, I still have a hard time even looking at Cleveland Hall due to this bad memory. So yes, I'm upset about it, but I'm not upset to demand any type of restitution whatsoever. I think your decision to basically kind of deny me my student teaching was probably a right move towards woke culture. And I feel like that's something we need to do to move our society forward. Now, I think a lot of conservatives fear woke culture because they fear that white people might be on the other end of some anti-prejudicial legislation. So all I can say is I guess I took one for the team. And by the team, I guess I mean the human race. We need to become a culture that embraces diversity because, well, white people have done a lot of bad through the years. I mean, I think about all the American history we learned. It starts how white people show up on the soil. There are centuries of history of Native Americans in the United States who we never hear about. That was never discussed in history class. I think it's a good sign if when conservatives are called out for their types of beliefs on this, which are hurting people. And yes, it shows that the conservatives are not doing as good a job as they think they are. My concern here isn't to get political. I'm saying, like, you made a decision in one direction. Unfortunately, it did hurt me at the time. However, even though you hurt me, I still want to help you. I would like to make some kind of appointment with you with the Department of Education. I would like to propose a way to screen for neurodiversity and see what is being done to address it. There's no reason why autistic people, such as myself, can't teach the next generation. So yes, I'd like to meet, and I believe there's a lot to discuss. I have a lot of experience working with the university, tutoring students in the writing lab, which has received many accolades throughout the years. If you're not familiar with the writing lab, we are pretty well done here at WSU. I've also tutored student athletes. This is a time during the mid-2000s in which I was tutoring part-time for Washington State University. Please contact me and let me know when you're willing to meet, and I want to make sure that I give updates on my YouTube channel as well as my TikTok channel to my many followers. Sincerely yours, Mark Rollins. Okay, well, I'm going to send off that letter, and hopefully we're going to give some updates. Maybe even we'll have some by next week, as far as, probably not by next week. Wheels of justice turn slowly, and hey, we should continue to fight for change. By fight, I mean the non-violent type here. From what I said, I mean, I've said like, hey, some things have happened that were very upsetting to me, and I often feel like the people who did this didn't know how upsetting they were at the time, and they also didn't know what event it is. I understand that. People need to know this kind of thing. If you're in a situation where you're feeling like you're being mistreated, you have a right to turn around and say, hey, I feel like I'm being mistreated because of these reasons. And that person has a right to listen to you. If they don't listen to you, they are not worth it. You need to leave that situation. In the meantime, next week I'm going to write a letter to another organization which dealt me a blow that also set me back terribly. And I wonder if I'm going to be as understanding on this one as I am to this one. If you're wondering why I'm doing this, it's because, gotta tell the truth, this stuff happened to me. I've been treated this way all my life, and I'm really tired of it. And honestly, I think I need to tell people, hey, I've been treated this way. I know you didn't mean harm, but it's happening. And I think what we need to do is constantly rethink. Now you'll understand that, hey, I'm willing to take a lot. But at some point in time, if the burden is too much, I'm going to ask you to help me shoulder it. I think that's really all I'm asking. Anyway, so this has been Mark Rollins from the Geek Church, and I'm signing off.